So right now we're going to get started again. I'll give away a book. I'll have a harder trivia question next time. So Jerome Marc, Technical Product Marketing, is going to present Automating the Enterprise with CloudForms and Ansible. We've talked a lot about automation. We've talked about hybrid cloud. We've talked about a lot of stuff. Jerome's going to make it a little more real for us. So that's the goal. So Jerome, all yours.
So my name is Jerome Marc. I've been with Red Hat for 4 years, originally a solution architect. And then about a year ago, I moved to California and joined the management business unit. And I'm taking care of CloudForms for Red Hat. So today is the topic, I think this one is on as well. The topic of today is automating the enterprise. And specifically, we will look at how we can achieve it using cloud management platforms and IT automation. So here is the agenda we'll cover today. So first, we'll look at organization needs, okay, what they're after, but also the challenges that they are experiencing. So we look at Red Hat management portfolio, and especially, well, like we mentioned, CloudForms, it's multi-cloud management platform. We'll cover its capabilities and also how it can help the organization and the operations team increase agility and accelerate IT service delivery. And finally, I have selected some customers that are using this solution, and I want to share with you their successes. Right, and I mean, nothing new here. We have heard a lot of speakers speaking about innovation. So as a company, if you don't innovate today, you become irrelevant, right, in the market. So the only solution to keep relevant is really to innovate faster and faster. And of course, you get more pressure. You need to increase productivity. So the business is asking more productivity. You need to deliver services faster. And at the end of the day, you need to go to market much more rapidly and with innovative solutions. And most of the time, this responsibility falls under IT operations, right? So they get more stressed. They need to carry all the hard work that's required for the organization to be successful. And so, and we mentioned that as well in some of the talks, the IT operation is placed in a situation where, like, the entire success of the organization depends on them. It's on their shoulder. And so, of course, they are on their own, and this adds a lot of stress to them. And even more, it creates much tension between this team, the operations, and the rest of the organization. So most of the time, they are being called the bottleneck, not making things happening fast enough. The truth is, an organization without operations cannot sustain, right? So even if you have the best application coming from the developers, if you cannot deploy it in production, manage it properly, and scale it efficiently, this is not going anywhere, right? So you need really the right tools for the operations in place. So what are those needs, right? What is the enterprise needs today, as well as the IT operations? So on one hand, you get the business and the developers. They want more agility, more velocity. They want to increase the speed, etc. And on the other hand, you have the operations, but they still don't know what that means. So that's what we are going to cover here. And as a hint, it's not by adding more money to the existing infrastructure that we are going to fix this. So let's have a look at the different challenges. And before even looking into it, fortunately, most of the organization out there have realized that they need really to adapt to this change, right? This is the results of a survey that Red Hat commissions with IDC that shows that almost 3/4 of the respondents realize that they actually need to embrace this change and bring new tools into the organization. And these tools are around management, hybrid management, and automation. So let's have a look at those needs, right? So what do they need, or what do they think they need at least to become more agile and accelerate service delivery? So the developer wants more flexibility. So they want direct access to their resources, to IT resources. Now, the operators, on the other hand, they are very anxious to give away their IT. So they are afraid that they will lose control because the developer will start installing their own applications. They will remove security configurations, etc. So they will start managing it on their own. So operations will really lose control here. And so in order to keep control, they want to understand what's going on. So visibility is very important. So what we want is really provide a way for developers to give them flexibility, but also give all the visibility to about the environment, about what's going on, what's created on a day-to-day basis for the operators. And that's really to make sure that they remain in control, that they're confident about their systems. And of course, it's great to give more flexibility to the users, but you also need a way to make them accountable for the actions, of course, and what they consume. So we need to be able to track ownership of the resources they use, maybe the users, maybe the teams. And for that, we might need to implement quotas. So that can be limiting the consumption of resources to a fixed number or maybe a fixed amount in terms of dollar value. We can also reserve some instances in advance, so reserve resources in advance for a particular project, for example. And of course, control the usage of these resources over time, right? So again, this is the same goal here. We want the operations to feel comfortable in leaving more flexibility to the end user to access resources. So one of the needs, right, for the organization is to be more agile, to add more agility to the business. And so how can we make things going faster? And this is not new to IT, right? It's across the industry right now. The current answer is to automate the service delivery of workloads, for example. So we need to be able really to define upfront a particular service deployment and then manage it over time. And this has to be defined once and then consistently deploy it again and again in a controlled manner. And within this deployment, we also want to make sure that everything is included. So your security rules, your firewall rules, any particular agents that you want systems to have in place needs to be added to this deployment process as well, so that, again, IT operation keeps in control. And of course, you want this to be transparent for the end user. So what they only care about is the service availability and where they can access it. So they want it as fast as possible. For the operations, you also need a way to track what's going on, right? So for example, the usage of the environments over time. So things like how much capacity do we have left? Are we running out of memory in this particular cluster? What happens if we add more VMs for this particular project? Are we going to impact performance in our data center? So, the operator needs the answers to all these questions to make informed decisions. For example, if they want to provision additional environments or even decommissioning some existing environments. And the best way to provide this is to give them the metrics, right? And we do that through reporting and dashboards. So once we have these metrics, we can also trigger alerts and even notification so that we keep control of the entire operation. And the latest need I wanted to highlight is the need to be relevant. So, we spoke a bit this morning about the developer out there that are seen as cowboys by the operations. That's how they like to call them. So they constantly go and play with new technologies out there. They download the latest libraries, the latest project available, but what they want ultimately is to bring these new toys within the organization. And, well, they want basically to play all day long, right? And so operations need to accept it. They cannot keep fighting about bringing these new technologies in their enterprise. Not just because they are not prepared or they don't have the right tools in place, or maybe they don't even know these technologies, so they often refuse to adopt it. And what they need to do is really to embrace it. So investigate these new technologies, and when relevant, basically choose to bring them in a controlled manner. And for that, of course, they need the right tools. So they need a solution that allows them to be flexible enough to adapt and be open to onboarding new technologies. I mean, we've seen all these needs, and our operator gets it there, but it doesn't know where to start. So there are a lot of challenges along the way. Again, we have covered some of them this morning, but let's look at them again. And the first one is around complexity of most organizations. So the balance between people, process, and technology is still the number one challenge for changes within an organization. Right? So often organization will install or concentrate their efforts on a new process, maybe deploying a new technology, but they will forget or omit to include the people aspect of the change. So we mentioned this morning and during the Q&A session as well, it's a culture that needs to change here. And the real challenge is to reduce the gap between the different teams, so make them communicate together. So a typical example is a service ordering, right? When a user wants to order a new service, you should not have to ask for each individual department in the organization for their manual approval. So networking, okay, we need to wait, a week for networkings to approve or add an entry in the DNS, etc. So all this latency creates delay, and we want to avoid that. Again, we want the end user to have the environment or the service as quickly as possible. So another challenge is, the fire and forget. So we often see developers bypass IT operations and create their own environments. And again, this is not new. Back in the day as a developer, we used to have our own desktop machine under the desk, right? And we will control that on our own. IT support will not have, or will not even know about it, right? We will install our own operating system, upgrade it whenever we want. And if we didn't have enough resources, we'll just buy more memory and open it up and add the memory into it. So that was all without control from the IT department. And today, it's even easier for developers to get access to resources, right? You just need a credit card, and you can simply go to a public cloud of your choice and order new resources, and you get them in seconds, right? So in practice, this is really happening, and the business is even encouraging this practice. So they often blame it on operators that they are not fast enough to react and to provide these resources to the end user. The problem with that is that organizations end up with a lot of resources everywhere, right? And not to mention the lack of governance and compliance for these environments. And so ultimately, that's more costs for the organization. So we mentioned it earlier. One of the other key challenge is to provide resources fast enough, right, to keep the business going. And this speed is really a fundamental need for the organization today, right? And so IT operations play a fundamental role in providing this agility and this speed for the business. We cannot, afford to wait for days or weeks for providing new resources for the developers or the business, right? It's expected to be ready in minutes, if not seconds. As soon as the developer has an ID, we want to experiment on it and explore how we can turn it into profit. And finally, I also wanted to speak about, the adoption of new technologies is great, but it has a cost associated to it. Most of the time, companies don't have the right skills or the right tool set to adopt new technologies. And that, of course, causes them to be very slow, right? And when they finally get it in hand, so when they hold the technology, they just realize that it's now obsolete, right? And they need to move on to the next trendy new technologies out there. So again, the tools that you use to manage, physical and virtual infrastructure does not apply well to manage the public cloud, for example. So what we need is really a tool set that can adapt, right? That can manage the old infrastructure or the current infrastructure and then be flexible enough and open to embrace new technology. What's the solution, right? We spoke a lot today about automation, right? So the first step here is to bring better automation in your organization. Operations are still doing too many manual tasks along the way, so things like during provisioning process, during applying patches, etc. It's always manual, so we want to to try to automate all these different steps so that they can focus on other things. And so we see a lot of hype today in the market around automation. So everyone today is talking about automation. And of course, the usual suspects are talking about automations too. So this is a quote from Gartner here, who are saying that the automation is a core fundamental to digital transformation. So some organizations today have already automating, right? But what they are doing is they are automating in independent pockets or departments in the organization. And when they do, they each have their own way of doing things, their own language, their own scripts, right? And they are often different, of course. So what they do is they don't communicate and they don't share what they learn from automating. And in that way, they don't get the full value of automation, right? Because when you automate in silos, well, your ability to reuse and standardize this automation is very limited. And so at Red Hat, we have introduced Ansible. It's taking really a simple, agentless, and extensible approach to automation, right? So it provides a common language across the organization for automation. So people can contribute and communicate using really the same language. And they can build, share, and reuse automation for their integration. And this works also, well, for the current technologies that they are using, but it's also future-proof for new technologies, and even for bridging the gaps between the different domains in the infrastructure. So things like security, like networking, will work hand in hand with the infrastructure. And this way you get really a common language or universal language to automate across the entire organization. And so this is exactly what we are doing at Red Hat. We saw it in the keynote this morning, right? Our strategy is to use Ansible automation across all Red Hat products. And this, of course, applies even more to the Red Hat management products. So let's look at those products. And I don't know, maybe we'll ask the room, but our operators, they only knows about Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So we have 4 different products in the management products. So how many of you are actually using satellite today? I see, not too many actually. Okay. CloudForms? No one knows about CloudForms. Oh, few customers, that's good. So, I mean, you will learn a lot today, then that's good. What about Ansible and Ansible Tower? Yeah, I see more hands there, that's good. Oh, you use all of them. And then Red Hat Insights. Anyone knows about Red Hat Insights? Yeah? A few hands. That's actually a very good offering from Red Hat. Okay, so let's cover them quickly here to give you an idea. So Red Hat Satellite, it's really to manage your Red Hat Enterprise Linux systems. Okay, so their deployment, the patching of them, and also the provisioning from one environment to the other, so dev, test, production. It's also integrated with Puppet, and we are working on adding Ansible to it as well. Red Hat CloudForms is, like I mentioned earlier, the multi-cloud management across infrastructure and clouds. So with CloudForms, you can define services, then make them available to the end user with, for example, a service catalog or a SelfService Portal, and manage it over time. We also support with CloudForms the governance and the security, as well as the financial management of it. We have Ansible Tower, which is really about centralizing all of your automation across the enterprise in one place. So with that, you get role-based access control delegation, so you can give access to some automation to some of the teams. And you get also an history of what's happening, so in terms of running automation, as well as the output in one place. So that's very good for troubleshooting and see what's going on. And then Red Hat Insights, which really helps you monitor your Red Hat Enterprise Linux systems, and basically provide recommendations on how they run today, so security, capacity, if there is any things you could change to affect their performance, for example, but also on they are going to run tomorrow. So we do proactive analysis of what's happening across our customers to find recommendations for your system based on what you have deployed, which application you are using, etc. It's really a very good tool, especially for performance and security. So if you haven't done so, there is actually a trial available on the Red Hat portal. So you can register, I think it's up to 10 nodes to see how it looks like and play with it. It's a SaaS offering, so it's a very, very easy to get started. And of course, at the bottom here, all of these products use Ansible as a common automation language. So yeah, as you have guessed, or as I mentioned, today we are interested in Red Hat CloudForms and how, together with Ansible, that can be a solution to increase the velocity of the enterprise and automate the way we do things. So what is CloudForms? And I see not many of you know about it, so that will be interesting. So as I said earlier, it's a multi-cloud management platform. It's based on the ManageIQ project, open source project, as well as the ManageIQ community. And one of its main capability is really to provide visibility across all your workload. So from the entire stack, right? So from storage to your hypervisors, to your guests, and even to the applications, including networking, etc. We also provide a self-service portal as part of the solution, which allows basically users to consume resources, right? So it allows them also to manage them over time. So there's full lifecycle management around it, and provide financial management, so they can see at any point how much they are actually consuming. And then we also provide the ability to monitor all of the environment for compliance. So in terms of quotas and consumption, but also for governance, like monitoring and remediating security issues, for example. And all of those functionalities are available across all infrastructure, right? From your VM to your containers. So this way, IT operations can define services and make them available to the users. They can also monitor what's happening across the organization in a consistent way. All right, so before we look further into platform's capabilities, I just wanted to highlight some of the key features of the platforms, right? Because they are really differentiators for this solution. So CloudForm is agentless, and it comes as a virtual appliance. So that's simply an image that you download and deploy either on your virtualization platforms or in the public cloud. You can also deploy it as a container if that's the way you use your infrastructure. And then you simply deploy it and start gathering data. And that's very, very fast. So in a few hours or even a few minutes, you get visibility of the entire infrastructure that you have deployed. So CloudForms continuously monitors the environments. That means that it can automatically discover when a new instance is started, for example. So it doesn't have to be started from the CloudForms self-service portal. It can also be started from any other location. And then we call it brownfield management. So CloudForms support both greenfield and brownfield management. Of course, having Ansible automation makes it basically the first cloud management platforms to take an integrated, so fully integrated automation-based approach to cloud management, right? So there is no product out there like CloudForms that actually integrates and provide you with the automation language out of the box. And of course, with this automation, you can not only do infrastructure as code for deploying new services, but also perform day-to operations for management of these environments. CloudForm can scale very easily. So you can start managing a small environment first, and then extend the footprint by simply adding additional appliances. So you deploy the same appliance over next to each other to scale it very easily to region deployment, for example. And this is because from day one, we architected CloudForms to be ready for HA and scalability. And of course, multi-tenancy and role-based access control. So enterprise features are supported. Things like Active Directory, like multi-tenancy I mentioned, it's all part of the platforms as well. Right, so let's look at some of the capabilities to give you an idea of what that means, right? So we said that we want the operator to get all the insights about the stack, right? From infrastructure to application that is running. And that's one of the strengths of Red Hat CloudForms. So you get basically all of these details under a unified view, right? Your virtualization, your cloud, your containers. You get access to information about the stack, like your storage, your networking, but also about the workload, right? So what's actually running within each of these instances. So we do that by scanning the environments and collecting information. So things like the users that are configured, the groups, which applications are installed in a Windows environment, or which packages are deployed in a Linux environment. Things like Microsoft registries are information that we gather and obtain within CloudForms. We call it smart state analysis. And one of the key points here is that it's agentless, right? So you don't need to install any agent on the system in order to capture this information. So once we have all these details or insights, we can establish relationships between the different entities. And we can even represent them graphically. So you can then navigate the stack, and see the relationship between your storage and your VMs, and which network or subnet they are connected to, etc. This can be very useful for operators, right? So when they want to troubleshoot and see what's going on, they can simply relate to this topology view and navigate through the stack. So, if, for example, a storage rack happen to fail, they will know exactly which container or which VMs are affected immediately. So CloudForms listens, I mentioned already, to ongoing utilization metrics. So you see a graph here on the top right of both the infrastructure, so your hypervisors, underlying infrastructure, as well as the workload. And this means you can also provide historical reports on resource utilization and also monitor for capacity issues, for example. So we can also predict by calculating some trends with these metrics. So very powerful here. And of course, this data can also be used to keep control on the spendings, right? So an operator can define rate cards across the infrastructure, across your organization, and then produce chargeback and showback reports for users or across users. So next, we want to give users access directly to the resources. At the same time, we want to keep control. So one of the best way of doing so is to provide a self-service portal with a service catalog, right, from which the user can request and manage their own resources. And in CloudForms, we will define a service as an operator and then make it available to the end user. So once the user logged in, he will be presented with a self-service catalog. And then the option in this catalog will have been defined by the operators. So depending on which user is logged in, you can extend the flexibility of what they have access to. So an experienced user will have more maybe options than a normal user. Once this service is ordered, CloudForms will validate the quota, and if necessary, will kick off an approval process, right, to ask, for example, for a manager to approve the request. And then at this point, the monitoring of resources kicks off or starts, and the user will get feedback on what is actually consuming, right? So that's good to keep track of costs as well. So one of the other challenge we highlighted here is the ability to track services, so from their provisioning to the retirement. So we saw that we can find, how much resources we are using, but another aspect of keeping track and control is to look at the compliance and the governance of these environments to make sure they are conform to what we want. And so in CloudForms, you can define a duration or a specific duration for the workload, so when you provision it. So you can, for example, define workloads that will be up and running for the duration of your project. So CloudForms will manage notifications and the decommissioning, the automatic decommissioning of these environments once this lease is complete. And of course, you can, at any point, extend the lease if you want this environment to be up and running for longer. So the services that we define can be very simple instances, but also, multi-tier applications with networking, with security configuration, as well as the deployment of applications on top of it. And that includes the configuration of these applications as well over the stack. And this service definition, like I mentioned, is entirely done using Ansible automation. So you use Ansible to deploy the resources as well as configuring the stack on top of it, so all the software and configuration that's required. So CloudForms monitors the changes in the environment that can be used to validate the configuration, of course. Like, is this security package installed to the latest version, etc. But we can make sure with this scanning as well, make sure that the developer are not actually drifting away from the golden template that the operation wants. And you can do this scanning on resources that are currently running, but also on VMs or containers that have not been started. So that means that before starting this old VM that was sitting there for a while, I can actually scan to make sure that's not going to damage my environments and cause trouble. So it's great to be able to monitor these services, but what's better is to add another level of automation, right, with alerts and notification, and maybe remediate these issues as well if they occur. And the platform has a policy engine embedded to do this kind of things. So one of the key concepts in CloudForms is the definition of policies using an event condition action model. So when event occurs, we assess conditions, and then based on the outcome of these conditions, we will run particular actions, right? And this way you can really monitor and automate any action that you want, like an environment reconfiguration. This is something that CloudForms will see, and you will be able to either notify people or remediate it. Things like adding additional nodes to a cluster can be entirely automated using CloudForms. So it's really a powerful tool. So you can ensure that the environment are running, of course, with the correct performance, configuration, security, but you can also, turn them down if they are, for example, not compliant with the policies in place. You can also automate the remediation if that's something that you want to do. And all of this automation inside CloudForms happens using Ansible. So it's out of the box, it's fully integrated, it comes within CloudForms as pre-configured, and you can perform a lot of tasks. We mentioned defining infrastructure as code to deploy new applications. You can also perform day 2 operations. You can reuse existing playbooks. So if your company has already performed some automation, you can simply import them in CloudForms and reuse them as they are. Or you can also use, like you see the last line, simply reuse the libraries of modules and roles that are available in the community. And we see a real traction across companies and even vendors to share their automation, so provide modules for others to reuse. So the community, the Ansible community is only a few years old, but we already see a lot of automation available across the different domains of IT. right? And this is a small subset here of what's available. And this is really because Ansible is very simple to understand and to get started with. So yeah, you see our operator here is quite happy, he has a smile on his face. He doesn't have to start from scratch. There are a lot of modules that he can reuse out there. And he can also share it with the other operators in the enterprise. So this way they communicate using the same language and they can reuse what they learn. All right, so of course we have already, I know we have one here actually, customers that are using CloudForms and Ansible together today. So I like to call them the rock star of the companies. So one of them is Cox Automotive. And it's a large organization in the US. They have around 20 different brands in North America, right? So they grew from acquisition. And of course, every time they bought a new company, they had a different IT environments to integrate to. So what they were after is really an easy way to onboard these different environments and also make it easier, to get new companies in. So they looked at different solutions and ultimately they chose CloudForms. And the main reasons for that was the hybrid cloud management capabilities as well as the open architecture, so allowing them the flexibility to onboard new technology further down the line. So today they use CloudForms as their self-service portal and they automate the entire provisioning process. Another one of these customers is Macquarie Bank. They are located in Australia. And they recently, actually, in Red Hat Summit in Boston, received an innovation award in the category of enterprise transformation. So they were able to use different Red Hat technologies to implement a solution based on microservices and containers across public clouds. So really the true innovative, migration approach to workload. And they use Ansible as the automation language to implement the workflows. And then Red Hat CloudForms as a cloud management solution to control what's going on and manage it over time. And of course, in the financial sector, that's something very important to keep the environment secure. All right, so coming back to our little story at the beginning. So we have our operator, he has now implemented this multi-cloud management platform. And of course, he has deployed automation all across the enterprise. So the developers and the business are happy. They get what they wanted, and they get it very fast. So they don't see the operator as a bottleneck anymore. And in contrary, they see this team as the rock star of the company, right, making everything happen. And of course, our operator on the other side, well, now he has everything under control, so he can focus on other things than the day-to-day operations that he used to be. And that's the end of the story for today. Thank you very much.
Caught me off guard. Do we have any questions for Jerome or Jerome?
Jerome.
Go ahead.
I'm curious to know if Red Hat's done anything to make learning Ansible easier to learn. And I'll give you a case in point here. Last year I was trying to do something with Ansible to make the configuration change. And after reading all the documentation on the Ansible website, I came away with like a good sense of what it was supposed to be able to do. But when it got down to the nitty-gritty of actually making it happen, a lot of what I was seeing was, well, go find another example of someone doing something similar. Except that what I was trying to do, no one else seemed to have approached it or solved it the same way. As a part of researching that, one of the things I found out was that there was no formal definition for the Ansible language. So, for instance, there's no keyword list of here's all the Ansible keywords, here's their syntax, here's what they mean, and those types of very basic things that, for instance, if I want to learn a new language, those are some of the things that I'd be looking up. So I'm curious to know what Red Hat's doing.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. And ultimately, there are many ways of doing the same thing, right? And Ansible actually follows this approach where solution A will work for you, but another person will do solution B that works as well. So the community is relatively new, right? It's few years old, but we've seen a real uptake of users. And like you said, I mean, the best way still today is to actually find other people that have done the same thing and look at what they have done, learn from that, and then adapt it for your own needs. There is a good documentation available on the Ansible website, but I agree with you. There is no real how-to as such to perform easy deployment, and that's maybe something that the community needs to develop a bit more. Personally, I had to read the documentation and get my hands dirty to really be able to do what I wanted, right? So you're right. I mean, especially when you touch upon infrastructure as code, being able to deploy instances on a public cloud and then getting a hook to these instances to then apply the configuration on top of it, deploying an application, etc. All these little things that you need to fully automate your enterprise. I guess I agree with you. We need to develop that a bit more. But as I said, it's very starting to pick up now, and there are more and more people that will contribute to that. So that's really an open approach, and we need to continue this community.
And I think it's part of Red Hat, right? We're trying to build a community to accelerate that. On the other side of things, I don't know if John Wellman is here. John? No, John. So in training, I just saw it from my email last week. We're starting to put together formal Ansible training modules and online training and on-site training. So that whole process, it's like Ansible is one of those things, it's almost like viral. It became very, very popular very quickly. We acquired them. We're trying to keep the community vibrant without putting too much structure around it. So it's a balance, right? But the point well taken. So any other questions? We'll take one more or two more. Go ahead.
Just wondering, what does the deployment platform look like?
Platform in itself?
What do you need to deploy CloudForms?
Yeah, so CloudForm is basically provided as an image, so a virtual image. So if you run VMware, Hyper-V, Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization, or even public cloud like AWS, Google, Azure, and you just download this image and then upload it in your infrastructure of choice. And from there on, you simply connect it to the manager API, like your vCenter API, or you provide your AWS key, and platform starts collecting data. Oh, well, yeah, there is a full documentation on that, but typically, if you can access your API endpoint, that's all you need. Yeah. For some environments, when we do smart state analysis, we will use other things like 22 on the host, the ESXi host, for example. But apart from that, it's using the endpoint. As long as you can hit it, then you should be fine.
All right, one more question. There was one question here. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah. You said that in order to deploy CloudForms, you just put it on VM, right? And it discovers everywhere.
Yeah.
Do you need to put on each of the cloud providers?
Exactly. So that's up to you, right? So you could run, if the firewall is open, you could have it hosted in one data center and then query your public cloud, for example. A better approach to deploy it is to create regions and dedicate a CloudForms appliance for each of the regions and then get a master to see all of them.
So kind of capsules, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's very similar. And this is because of network and bandwidth, of course. There is a reference architecture that you can download from the customer portal as well to explain really how you can deploy it on multi-regions and at large scale as well. Yeah.
All right. Okay, does this work? No? Yeah, it does. So, so with that, thank you very much, Jerome.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. À la prochaine.